No, I believe me, I get it.
Hello, everybody. Uh-oh, we had a lag. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Quantum Witch Cafe, your safe place to talk about anything oh my gosh, I haven't done this in so long, guys. I lost my flow. Your safe place to talk about anything strange, paranormal, fringe, UFO, UAP if you're fancy, occult, you name it. We've talked about everything from remote viewing to Satanism on this channel, and we welcome it all with open arms as long as you're loving one another when you're doing it and open minded. You are welcome here. Tonight, I have the honor of talking to Tom Matt, and he is an author of a great book called Jesus Goes to Hollywood, and it's a memoir of madness. This book has a little bit of everything for it. So before we get into introducing Tom with his bio, which I'm going to have him tell you about yourself because I like that more, I'm going to tell you what I thought about the book, like first impressions. If you get this book, you're going to learn about two things. You're going to learn about what it's like to be a person in the world with mental health challenges and addiction, but you're also going to learn about being somebody that sees the world so differently that they literally, it feels like, have to pull away from society to start putting the pieces back together of whatever's blown this consciousness open of theirs or their sensory perceptions open. Right away, this book will grab you, like right away. There's no leading into it. The first chapter, the first sentence, you're like, whoa. You sit up in your bed and you're like, wait, what did you do? so but it's not something that you would think of automatically as being related to UFOs or paranormal, but it does have high strangeness to it, and it does have something along the lines of remote viewing, which we'll definitely get into. But Tom, I'm gonna have wait before I have you introduce yourself. I want to say thank you to anybody listening now, later, audio only, YouTube. Do the likes, do the reviews, feedback, subscribes, shares, all that stuff. But Tom, I love to have people introduce themselves. Who are you, and what do you do?
Okay, yeah, I'll be happy to jump in. Thank you for that comment on the book. We'll speak to that in a minute after I do my bio here. Yeah, my background is in marketing and advertising. I had an advertising agency in Atlanta for 20 years before about 10 years ago, where I was also addicted to cocaine. And I had what you can best describe, because it's exactly what it is, a complete mental break from reality. I walked out on my family, my wife, my kids, and my business. Literally walked out on my thriving business that was successful because I was under the delusion that my kids had been replaced by aliens. Government satellites were following me around. My wife was an adult movie star. There were cameras in my office and following and watching everything I did. And my business was a front for another business. So there was a lot of psychotic thoughts, and they were drug fueled. So I was definitely the instigator of this psychosis. Now, what's funny is that it's funny, it's actually not funny, but looking back, what's funny is that was addicted before, and I'd been clean for 5 years. So I knew I could stay clean and sober. And when I say addicted before, I'm the kind of person, a high functioning addict. Do coke, you do it for a couple of years. You're like, I need to straighten up, stay sober for a few years. So by the time I hit 40, I was clean and sober. But in my mid 40s, I picked up again. And that is when the shift occurred in my brain. Something literally opened up or was turned on, and where it was broken. The filter that most people have just completely disintegrated. And the book was written about, the book is about how I walked out on my family and how we got back together. And most importantly, how something opened up in my brain and how I see the world now in a completely different way. I literally see more of it. But to your point about the first, how they grabbed it. Yeah, the book starts, just for those uninitiated, with me setting my house on fire. I mean, that's literally how it started, because I wanted to have the local police and firemen come to the house and put it out, because I thought that would resolve all the issues. Obviously, that's not what happened. And if you want to know what happened, you can read the book. But at the end of the day, I'll say this: there's a happy ending, and there's more to the story, because the book is 10 years old. It was 10 years ago that all of this happened. And since then, My mental health has improved because I'm going to have 10 years sober, December 29th of this year. So that I'm very excited about.
That's amazing.
Thank you. My mental health has improved, clean and sober, take care of myself. But my brain and the way I move through the world is completely changed. You know, my neurodivergent brain. It's something, everything, you know, my vision is completely changed, and we'll jump into that. So yeah, that's it. And now I do marketing strategy on the side. I'm a consultant, marketing strategy consultant, while at the same time, I'm obsessed with getting to the answer of what happened to me and seeing if other people can do what I do, because there's a psi element, there's a remote viewing element, there's a telepathy element to it. And last year I've been, you know, hanging out on UFO Twitter, looking for the connections, and I've made some over the last year. So yeah, let's start there.
Yes, absolutely. Because this is, you know, we want to get into the weirdness. I'm sure you've talked about that mental health aspect of it is very important. And you're extremely candid throughout the whole book. And that is hard to do. And I think that a lot of people that are experiencers have had these moments where if they read a book or of like yours, they think that could have easily been me if, you know, I would have, I don't know. I just feel like it's so relatable. I think at one point we're all afraid of our brains detaching from reality after, you know, an experience, or even if we do, you know, substances and have a mental break from reality, it's scary and we're afraid to lose it all. And you did, and now you're back, but you got this amazing gift. And that was going to be my question: is how did you end up on UFO Twitter?
Well, so when I got sober, actually, let's take a step back. Let me take
Okay.
a step back,
Yeah,
because I think you spoke to something I'd like to speak to about people who
absolutely.
are experiencers. You know, there's always people say on UFO Twitter, and I find it very frustrating. UFO Twitter attracts so many people with mental illness, and that is so annoying. You know, everyone has a mental illness, so just like one form or another, for a week, a month, or something, even neurosis. Just like a physical illness. And you don't have to stay stuck in a mental illness. You know, you can do things to get out of it. You know, obviously, if you are getting high every day and you start getting paranoid, clearly that you might have a lifestyle change so that doesn't happen. But if you get high and you have these paranormal experiences, they're not necessarily just from the drugs. There might be something else going on, and you're in a state where you can have these experiences. The thing about that is nobody really cares, because they're dismissed because the drugs are involved, you know? So when I was on my year psychosis of, you know, literally flying around the globe, spending money, being psychotic, I was on drugs sometimes, but on sometimes I wasn't. Even without the drugs, I still had these absurd thoughts or ridiculous thoughts. And the thoughts came in because I had my headphones in. This is when they, you know, headphones, I had them in 24/7, and I didn't want anyone else to talk to me. All I would do is listen to music. And come to find out, I was somehow taking parts of the music, and it was influencing my behavior, if that makes sense. It was like little pieces of the songs. It was like almost like schizophrenia or like that. I would take a piece of it and act on something for some reason. I don't know why. So I got back with my family. You know, I checked myself into a psych ward, you know, because I was like homeless in downtown LA. I was literally homeless. I'm like, listen, I have to get, you know, I got to check into a psych ward. So they said bipolar. I was like, okay, I need to get clean and sober. My wife, will she take me back? Ultimately, she did. I stayed clean and sober. But before I did, the last time I used was, I got drugs. It was December 29th, 2012. And this time when I did it, I had these literal hallucinations. That's not the right word, because hallucinations mean you think it's real. I saw these virtual reality images, these holograms right in front of me. I saw 4 distinct things: the Grim Reaper, a slot machine, cells on a dinosaur's, the back of a dinosaur, and cells moving through a body. So I was in like this awe state. I was in this awe-inspired state. And I was like, you know, and it's lasted a while. And I was like, wow, can I do this when I'm sober? You know, can I do this without drugs? And I found out at that moment, all the time, these things came to me. This upside, the thing that I've labeled upside, I can do all the time. I can literally see these images all the time. They're not necessarily true. It's not like I can watch. It's not like a precognition, which I've actually tried. Sit there in front of the Kentucky Derby, watch the horses run around, and Upsight will literally show me a holographic image of the horse race, right? Running around a track, but it's never true, right? It's just something that looks like what I'm seeing, and it's not true. Now, so I've learned, like, don't try to use this for money, because it lies. And we know the phenomena is a trickster, if nothing else. But what's fascinating is, even though it doesn't tell the truth, there's still the fact that this image is showing to me, it's coming from somewhere. So for the last 10 years, I've been trying to partner with an academic research institute to get into a lab, get into an MRI. Let's see where these things are coming from. Where is this information coming from in the universe? Is it coming from me? I'm convinced it's not. Is it coming from outside of me? How far away is this thing? So that's where I am now on my journey of Upsight. And if you're on UFO Twitter, the reason I went on there a year ago was because Avril Haines, the National Security Director, I'm not sure her exact title, said, listen, our government admitted that we are looking for extraterrestrials. Before that, I made a vow to stay away from New Age stuff and ufology, because I didn't think I would be taken seriously to study Upsight. Not only that, I wanted everybody to know that my mental health was better. So I needed to kind of distance myself from my experience with extraterrestrials, with interdimensional beings, or whatever these things are, and have a long time of, okay, he's not doing drugs. Something must be happening that's not drug related. But when she spoke, I was like, listen, I'm going to go on UFO Twitter. I'm going to find the people that are doing psi research, telepathy research, and I'm going to engage with them. I'm going to meet with them, and I'm going to, hopefully I'll find somebody that wants to do research. And that's what I've been doing the last year. That's how we met.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I think I saw you on some shows, and I saw you on Twitter, and your posts. You did a couple of posts that were like longer, like what do they call, threads, and they were, the way you explain it to me, it definitely makes more sense. How you explain a lot of it on Twitter. But if somebody's never read those, how would you explain Upsight to somebody? Because to me, it seems like it creates almost synchronicity in your life at some points, and then it does things at other times. So if somebody's new to you and new to the term Upsight, what is Upsight?
That's a good question. So this is how I describe Upsight. Upsight is the ability to manifest and see these holographic images, whether that's this far out or 20 feet away, and not just see them, but interact with them. Okay, so not only will I see it, let me give you an example. You and I are talking now. If I turn my head to the right, I'm not going to do it now because I don't want to concentrate on it. If I looked and paid attention, something could be there. It could either be something we're talking about. Maybe it would be a horse race because we just mentioned it, right? So maybe it'll be some horses running, or it could be a guy cooking a pizza. Whatever it is, once I see it, I'm like, I focus on it. And again, there's a physiological response. You can see my eyes dilate and they focus, and you can see my pupils get bigger. So whatever it is, once I engage with it, right now, I'm an active participant in it. And amazingly, so when it's coming at me, let's say it's like a photon or a light wave coming at me, it feels different on my eye than when I'm like, if I see let's say a good example, if I see a guy cooking a pizza and I say, make that an elephant cooking a pizza, it feels different on my eye than when it's coming in. So these things are really subtle and nuanced, but that's why I want to get into a lab where they can study exactly what's going on. So that's what Upsight is. But here's the thing, that's just what it is. I've also got a name for what I'm seeing. When I wrote the book, I called it Schizopedia. Mm-hmm. Right? I called it that because it's like Wikipedia. There's knowledge there, but it's a lie. So it's like schizophrenic. It's like it's showing you something that you're like, wow, what is this? And then it's complete nonsense, or not complete nonsense, but there's a trickster element to it. Since then, I call it the organic metaverse, and I think this is what the ancients called the Akashic records or the noosphere. Yes. I think there's something there that's always there. I just happen to be able to see it. And I've learned that the images that come back and keep seeing again and again are the ones that are real, and the ones that are more ephemeral, or like dreams are the ones that I'll just see once and they're gone, you know? Does
That
that help?
makes sense. Yeah, it does, and it also, it's almost like, and I think you may have talked about this at one point, or maybe this is what I was thinking when I was reading about it, is almost like lucid dreaming while you're awake, because in lucid dreaming, you can take control of what's going on and interact with the dream, but you're
Yeah.
doing this while you're awake, so that's really fascinating. Um, it
Absolutely. And in fact, and I have a pinned tweet. If you look at my Twitter feed,
Mhm.
there's this pinned tweet. I have an image. I call it Upsight. And for me, and would imagine most people, the closest stuff is the lucid dreaming, right? That's the closest. The next one is remote viewing, and then farther after that is astral projection, and I call it abstract knowledge, where I can do math stuff. And you know, lucid dreaming is personal and it's close. You have family in there, you have private stuff. Remote viewing is like this place that everybody can look at. Remote viewers, they can all see this. And astral projections, you know, some people can go out there. So from my perspective, or for me, that's exactly how it is. Now, I'm not, let me be clear about this. I've had discussions and watched people talk about on UFO Twitter everywhere exactly how remote viewing works. And they're all about having a target, because you can only prove somebody is remote viewing with a target. Okay, all those things are true, but that's not remote viewing. That's proving remote viewing. You know what I mean? That's only if you have to convince somebody else. A remote viewer can do it by themselves without having to prove anything to anybody, you know? And maybe it's not there, but I could sit there and remote view the Eiffel Tower. Do I know what can I see? Watch people in parasols walk around the Eiffel Tower, right? So that was 100 years ago. Is it real? I don't know. I've seen people, recently walk around it. When is it? I don't know. So to me, that's, you know what I mean? Remote viewing and remote viewing for a target and for, like, say, a spy or somebody to prove it are completely different things. They can be the same, but they know, they can be useful for that, but it doesn't have to be. It's an interesting gift that some people have.
Yes, and you mentioned it. I think it's interesting because when people talk about like the holographic universe and many worlds theories and the Akashic records, a long time ago, I taught a class about accessing your past life through the Akashic records, and it's exactly kind of like how you explain it. If anybody's has the ability to tap into these records, and I know there's some people like, oh, Akashic, that's you know, it's a name that belongs to another culture, but that's the closest thing we have to describe some of this. It's like slices of time,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
every second that you live is just like recorded in a slice of it of that moment, so you can kind of go back and forward and see it. So that also brings to question, like, are you able to see other like simultaneous realities, or how one outcome could have happened versus the one that you're seeing in this realm, I guess, or in this every day. But it's easy for do you ever get lost in it, is what I'm getting at,
Um,
like,
I
do you ever
used to,
start watching
my
something
gosh,
and then
I used to
you
get
know
lost into it. I
Mhm,
used to do it when I was coming out of my psychosis. I would
mhm.
spend out. It was almost like it was another psychosis. I was obsessed with math and staying in there. Now I have a very good, a healthy balance because I have a work and everything. But when I first came back, and I didn't think I was ever gonna. I talk about this in the book. I didn't think I was ever gonna be able to interact with anyone in a normal way. Because my
Mhm.
brain was so scrambled. But to the point about past lives or other lives, there's a section in the book that I talk about when I'm really depressed. I'm not suicidal. You know what I mean? You're thinking about it.
Mhm.
Um, and at the same time I was thinking this, I was also on another planet where they killed me on another planet. My body was, I talk about how even though I'm here, I'm also on another planet in front of the leader and they kill me. And I felt it at that moment. And I felt better here when I died there. It was crazy. That was like, I haven't had
Wow.
anything like that since then. That was right when
Yeah.
I was coming out of this, but something
I
happened that
Yeah.
shifted.
I've only had one other person talk about something like that.
Yeah.
Um, like an experience like that, and it was somebody talking about, like how our instead of saying soul, this person was talking about our essence. So, but it's essentially the soul or your spirit, your astral body, light, but whatever you're calling it, you know,
Sure.
your essence. It's he was talking about it can cease to exist in another place and then wake up here, but it can also be simultaneous because in other places there's not time, and it gets super complicated from there on.
Without a
But
doubt. I mean,
mhm.
it's funny to think that let's call it a life force that'll use your
Yeah,
same life force is
yeah,
somewhere else, and it has an outcome that that is, it's not good for you right then over there,
right,
but here it shifted over here. So that was a fascinating. I've thought about that a lot. I don't know what to make of that at all. There's so many things.
yeah,
There are so many things I don't know what to make of. The only thing that that I know I can do is I can do it on demand. I don't have to wait for inspiration. I don't have to
right.
that's why I'm so driven to get into a lab where you can hook me up to any machine, watch my staccatic eye movement. They have these machines that follow your smooth pursuit eye movement. So let's say I manifest a cheetah running across the savannah, right? Now they can watch my eyes, and if I'm faking it, your eyes jump, right? But if there's something there, whether it's cheat or whatever, it's going to be smooth, and they can measure that with these with these devices. And another thing, again, your pupils, when you see something like arousing, your pupils change they dilate.
Mhm.
So let's say if there's or scary. So if let's say I'm on a ledge or I want to see a pretty woman or something like that, my eyes change their shape. I'm looking at something no one else can see, but my eyes are going to change their dilation. So there's so many things that I know that we can prove. And hopefully next year we'll speak to that before we in the call. Hopefully, I know.
Oh,
Well,
sure,
hopefully, I know
yeah.
that's going to happen next
Yeah,
year.
we're gonna get to a point where I'm be like, what's next?"
Yeah, exactly.
I wanna kinda talk about and ask you, so what is your experiencer story? Because you said, in the book, you briefly touch on that. How does this all relate to you as an experiencer, and what was your anomalous experience that you think maybe opened up more of this or, what makes you an experiencer, I guess?
Great. Okay, it's another great question. So as I said, I thought my kids were replaced by alien doppelgangers or something. But there's a scene. There's a scene. I say it's a scene. I spent the month of April on St. John's Island, right? Now, during this time, I think I'm getting telepathic messages broadcast into my head. Again, I'm on drugs, so we can dismiss this. But while I was on the island of St. John's, everyone knows about the a Close Encounter scene where Richard Dreyfuss does the Devil's Mountain out of the potatoes and he builds it in his living room. My Devil's Mountain scene was the hotel room in St. John's. I took the fan and I hung strings from it. Okay, every strings closed. I drew pictures and I was on the floor and now I'm drinking heavy. I'm wasted a lot. I am on drugs, but these alien beings are telling me what to do, and I literally decorated my hotel room with what their galaxy looked like. So I would lay in bed at night and I'd have all these jewelry, clothes, pictures hanging over me. And that was my first experiencer moment. And they made me do some other ridiculous things. And you know about it in the book. It's kind of
Very
embarrassing.
candid, guys. He holds
Yeah.
nothing back.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
I'm sorry,
very
I don't
candid.
wanna laugh at your experiences,
No,
but
it's
as somebody
vivid.
that's kind of like, we do strange things, like or things that we're like, "Oh my gosh, like, that did not work," or "That did not make sense," or
No, it
"It
did
made
make
sense at the
sense. So
time," like.
right. So, but this is where looking back, I wrote about it because it happened. But looking
Yeah,
back, I'm like, were they well, I thought obviously they were testing me,
right.
but you say, oh, nobody was testing you. You were having these ridiculous thoughts. You were wasted. I don't care.
Mhm.
That's to answer
Yes, but
that's the
people
first
don't
one.
say that to other people. People don't say that to people at Hopkins studying, you know, uh, psilocybin.
True. I
You
agree,
know?
100% agree with
So, whether you're on and I'm not advocating for the use of any sort of drug because that's addictive. I
Yeah,
am an advocate for plant medicine,
sure.
and it does the same thing. How is it that when you take ayahuasca or you take psilocybin or even marijuana people I have a whole book here on, cannabis and magical herbs and the occult, and it's all these altered states. There's tons of plants that do it. So, what is so different about somebody being drunk and their vision because some people have like what if I got drunk and meditated and it relaxed my mind enough to expand my consciousness. We cannot be so quick to judge people just because they have done these things
And
because
not only that, let's think about this too. This is it. I'll just do the analog. We shoot bison and buffalo and lions with darts to medicate them so we can work with them and control them. Obviously, these interdimensional beings, extraterrestrials, if we're wasted, they can do it without, you know what I mean? They're intelligent. They're like, okay, let's go with this guy. Nobody's going to believe him. I don't know if that's true, but you can see the analog. You're like, okay. To your point about the psilocybin, one of the things I wanted to do, and this is very specific, is like, again, thinking for 10 years, how can I prove Upsight and how can I be a control? Now, if you know psilocybin or LSD, there's group hallucinations. So everyone's tripping together, everyone's tripping balls, and 6 guys see, do you see what I see? Do you see these things? And they're like, yeah, I see it. Right now, if everyone is on psilocybin except me, and I'm the control, and I'm seeing what they're seeing, obviously it is not just from the mind, it is outside the mind, and it's something there. Then we can see it. When they all come down, they can't see it anymore because their mind's not open from the psilocybin. But I, as the control, I can say, okay, it's there. So now we've just proven it's not in our heads, it's outside of us, and we can access this, and maybe we can all access the same thing. And if you can do it on psilocybin, maybe with training you can do it without it as well.
yeah, absolutely. It's I remember a psilocybin experience, and I was taking a biology class at the time, and we were talking about how the brain blocks out, everything, right? The big filter, basically. And I was talking to he was my boyfriend at the time. Now he's my husband, but we're in Sedona by this, we're doing mushrooms. And the next thing I know, it's like one of those things where he's like, why can't we see the world like this? Cause we were like in nature, we were playing with bugs, like
Yeah,
we were just like kids. And he's like, well, how come we don't appreciate this when we're not on this? And I was like, well, our brains shut it out. And how much information is our brain shutting out that you can access? Um,
absolutely.
so it's
And
just
the thing
fascinating.
is, though, you still have to, whatever happened to me, it was without a doubt traumatic. It was like you can't, I didn't ease into it. I didn't do it the right way. Hopefully me and other people can get to where I got without having the trauma and the all the horrible things. I don't think you have to go through it. Some people maybe say you do. I hope not. But I had to go through this. I had to go through that place to get to this place, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. But I'm more appreciative of so many things now, and I'm grateful for this gift too. I'm like, this thing is I don't know. I think it's part of evolution. I think it's an evolutionary leap, just like Terrence McKenna talks about, psilocybin, the apes having mushrooms thousands of years ago. I think maybe this is part of the next level with vision, but I can't prove that. It's just a hypothesis.
Well, everything begins with that. Everything begins with an idea or a hypothesis. And, even the things that we think of mainstream science now, somebody thought was like super crazy and wild and not possible way back, and
For sure.
before it was, before people were convinced or before it was proven. So I think that you're obviously compelled to have this and you're seeing it. And even if it's not real, wouldn't you like to know why you're seeing it or what's different about your brain from a pure biological standpoint? What is different about your brain that allows you to see these things with your eyes open? It's like you said, lucid dreaming is close to it. You can see it while you're awake.
So when I came out of this, obviously this happened. I mean, I say obviously, but most people when this happened, I'm like, okay, I'm sober now. Guess what? I have this magic power. I have this ridiculous gift. I'm going to get a scan, an MRI, and they're going to tell me I have a tumor. That's what you think. If you have this phenomenon, there's a downside. So I got 2 MRIs. There was no lesions, no tumors, no strokes, no damage from drug use. Totally blessed by that. Now, what's cool is during the second MRI, I was like, okay, you know what? I was cogent enough to be like, I'm going to see if I can do Upsight in the MRI, because the MRI is gigantic electromagnets spinning. And I'm like, if these are electromagnetic waves, which I thought they were, I won't have any control over them because they'll be pulled apart and I won't have any control over them. Well, I had absolute control of Upsight in in the MRI while it was running. So now I'm like, okay, maybe these are different kinds of waves, like gravitational waves that don't interact with magnets. And since then I've come onto the idea that might be dark matter. But so I'm kind of like this experiment as I go. There's always things I'm trying to do to say, could it be this? I still haven't gotten in a Faraday cage. I would love to do that and see if it works in there. But yeah, I keep trying these experiments as I move forward.
That would be really interesting in a Faraday cage. So
Yeah.
if you have a Faraday cage and you're listening to my tiny channel one day, then contact Tom.
Yeah.
It just takes one person with a Faraday cage to prove this, or to test
Absolutely.
it. Yeah, that's absolutely fascinating. We were talking about a little something earlier, and we were talking about sort of like ADD or neurodivergence, and how so many of the like people that have any sort of neurodivergence are able to kind of be more perceptive of the world around them. Were you always overly perceptive, or was this something that got triggered with the breakdown?
So I would, you just find I was a business guy, I was a businessman, and I would do ADD. I would use Coke because people have ADD. If they do Coke, they focus. It's not like I mean, it is a party drug, but it can also help you focus. So it would help me focus. But I was always creative, without a doubt. I mean, I had a creative brain. But since this experience, it's just different. It's different. And I think I've had so many people I've talked on other podcasts say they have some form of this. I had a guy email me, he said, wow, no one, like you said earlier, no one's ever described this to me before, but something like this happens to me. And I when I'm trying to do this, or something like this happens at this point. So I know people have elements of it. And I think maybe if they wanted to train it or could, they'd have, it'd be more robust. And they could take it to the next level. Not everyone. I think it's like running a 4-minute mile. I think some people, like I'm a runner. There's no way I would, and no, there's no universe I could ever run that fast, but I
Oh
still
my
like running.
goodness, I'm horrible with running. So
Well, yeah. So, but see what I mean? Some are physiological.
And then sometimes you're like, well, maybe I'm just not a runner. And then,
right. And I don't think it's like a singer. Maybe singing is better. Some people can hurt certain keys. Some people can't sing. I can't sing. But so I think people have it on the spectrum, certain levels. Some people are really good at it, or something people can be good at it and get better at it. But you have to know what's interesting. You have to know it's there. You have to know that this thing is there. This sense, I call it sense/gift. I don't even know what it is, but that's what it feels like.
Wow, that's amazing. It's amazing that you kind of like figured out how to understand it as well, because it seems like for a while you were just and you said it happened even without drugs and alcohol sometimes. So just the fact of all this like hitting you at once must have been very overwhelming.
Oh yeah,
You said
no
you
doubt.
didn't think you'd be able to talk to people normal ever again, and that's very scary. I remember reading that part in your book, and I was like, oh my gosh, like after my brother passed away in 2014, I had like a super crazy experience with beings. And I remember like going out into the world and everything was too loud. It was too bright. And I was like, well, maybe this is just like grief, right? But it was like the experience happened. It was just weird. Like I couldn't take reality. And to be honest, my brother and I were not like the closest. Like, I obviously loved him. He's my family. He's my brother. We grew up together. But at the same time, it wasn't like, losing somebody like that I talked to. We didn't talk every day. He was into drugs. So I didn't know what he was doing half the time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like when you have like an experience, it blows something open. So I can only imagine what you were saying with these actual visuals happening and with everything in the world hitting you at once, just so
Yeah,
it's amazing you were able to just like kind of make sense of it all. How did you do that?
Getting hit by a psychic Mack truck. Actually, that's the best way to describe it. It's funny you say that about the everything loud. That is something that happens. Sometimes I'll go out and I'm like, okay, it's way too loud. And it's not. Yeah. It's not. It's
everybody else is fine. Yeah.
Nothing's loud. I'm sensitive and I just need to change my I just need to change something. You got to take care of yourself, for lack of another word.
Yeah.
But back to the if you want to talk about more about extraterrestrials, interdimensionals, whatever you want to call them. So I think a lot of listeners will find this interesting. So now I'm using Upsight to explore the organic metaverse, right? So I will literally sit on a couch and stare at the wall for hours. It looks like I'm in a catatonic state, but I'm not. I'm watching a movie. I'm not watching like just like anything else, except it's clear. It's a hologram, or it's Did you see what's the name of that book? The Queen's Gambit, by any chance? It's
That's the chess one?
yeah.
Yes, yes.
Okay, when she was laying on the bed, moving the
Mhm.
pieces of
Yeah.
the chess, that is a great description of what Upsight looks like.
Okay.
Okay, so
That's
imagine
interesting.
like she lays in bed looking at it. I would look at a wall. I can also look at it in bed. So when I was first came out of it, I used math to help calm my mind. It was something I could focus on. It was something new to me, and I read everything I could on mathematics. All of a sudden, I could take these dimensions that I didn't even know were dimensions and fold them, manipulate them. I'm like, okay, what am I seeing here? So, my mind created this system. It's kind of like our Cartesian coordinate system, but it's not the same thing. So that helped focus the mind. So I kid you not. So I'm doing this, right? And I'm seeing this. Now, when I say it, I'm seeing it just like you'd see a 3D image. Now I'm doing this, and a gray in a holographic gray would walk while I'm doing it. And I'm like, what's going on here? And I swear to God, more than one time would flip me off. And I'm like, what is that? That is nonsense. Where's that coming from? So when the first time I saw grays was like that, I would think, get out of here, So is that a virus? I also talk about how I remote viewed on a gray ship, like around this time too. And I was watching them remote view a town. It was wild. There was a whole bunch of them in a circle around this table, and they were remote viewing a town, and they were watching the people, and their eyes were following the people, and every head, it was like the eyes were picking up the remote view from, it's like a chorus. It helped. It's like taking the note from the next level. But when two of them noticed me, they looked at me, and I got scared, and I jumped out of that because I was startled. I startled them, and then they startled me. And this is before I even knew anything about Heist or C5 or anything. This stuff just happened, and I'm like, whatever, that's just weird. I never thought they were real or what they were, but they were always there, and they were nuisances. I was a nuisance to them. Since then, it's grown and evolved, and I don't say I don't, I know people have real big encounters with them. They come in and out, but it's not like I know when they're going to show up. They just show up, and they don't give me any particular information. They're not like, we're friends, I'm going to give this to you. I don't know. It's very weird. It's just they're there.
Yeah, I've heard of that from people too. Like that's not exactly how you explain it. Because like I said, I've talked to a lot of people, and there's some places where people say they're just standing there. That's the extent of the experience.
Well, remember, this
Being
is
watched
like,
by them.
yeah, this is in a place. I don't know where even it is. It's not
Right.
like they're in the room with me. If they're in the room with me, I think I'd be terrified. I feel like people have been abducted. I have no idea how they,
Mhm.
it must be so much harder than my experience, or, another thing in the book, I explain how there's two gifts that I got. One is the Upsight. The other one is, I've come to learn that it's called Tyler's protocol, maybe,
Hmm.
where you're getting some messages that are from outside you, right?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the book, you remember how I describe how I bold the type that I was getting. So I would read something, I would read a paragraph, and I would just pick for whatever. My brain would take the other words, every sixth word, and make a message. And that message I would think is true, and I would act on it.
Yeah.
Since then, I've realized that's like something called Tyler's protocol. When something is coming in, that's a thought that's not yours. And I can't make that happen, but I
Mhm.
can feel when it does happen.
Do you think that's some way of your brain trying to make sense of the actual information that is coming in? For example, like I because people describe like if you read like Operation Trojan Horse or any book that has or like one of Jacques Vallée's book where it has all these different accounts of people's experiences with different types of beings, different types of ships. Do you think that the information could present itself as it is in its own frequency, in its own being, what its own matter, however it actually is? And because our brains have learned a certain way and we've experienced reality a certain way, our brain's trying to make sense of some of it. So it makes this false information or this trickster like information, but it's actually our brain doing it because it's just trying to make sense of whatever's in front of us or coming
Hey,
in.
that's well said. Yeah, I couldn't say it better. That's exactly something like that is happening,
Mhm.
and I'm getting, or I'm, even though think about this, even though I'm understanding part of it and it makes sense to me, it still could be wrong, right?
Right.
Right.
So then we're like, "Well, why is it wrong?" Because
Yeah,
it's happened to me too. And
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah, right.
not exactly how like you have, but I have information. I'm like, and I have friends that kind of like fall victim for it, not, and they think that it's like a prediction. But how could you not when it first starts happening, you know? They'll be like, "Well, I'm so confused because I was told this was gonna happen, and
Right.
now it didn't
So yeah,
happen." And
I
they are,
don't.
like, literally just like, "Wait." Like, they're so confused because they knew that whatever was coming into them was a message for the future or of the future or for something. And
Yeah.
then when they find out it's not real or it's false, they're just I've seen people just, like, fall into depressions because of this.
Listen, I know exactly what you're
Mhm.
talking about, and that happened to me. And you could say that's a symptom of schizophrenia, thinking something is going to happen like
Right,
that. But it's a symptom of what you're talking about. It can be a symptom of schizophrenia,
right,
but yeah. So that I used to think that when I came out of this all the time. Since then, I've learned that the more tell you exactly, the less exact it's going to be. It's more of, oh, this is what I should be doing. You know what I mean? It's more, the more specific it is, the less I trust it. Does that make sense?
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does because that's, I think that's kind of like our own brain just kinda
Yeah.
saying, like, "This is what I'm interpreting this as." Because I actually don't have a word for what it is, or I don't have an experience to relate this new
Sure.
experience to. So, bam, it's an alien giving me a pancake, you know, like,
Right.
or
Yes. Right.
whatever
Right.
happens, you know, which is a case, guys. You gotta look into alien pancakes if you haven't.
You
But
know, but I will say this: there are feel. I do. The best way you can define it is a feeling that, oh, I need to do this. And when that feeling comes in like a calm, like a nice breeze, I'm gonna do it. I'm like, oh, we should. Or I'm like, I'll tell my wife, I'm like, we definitely need to go do this. She's like, why? I'm like, doesn't matter. Let's just go do it. Do you want
right.
to? She's like, yeah. So and those things, whenever that happens, it's good. You could call that the spirit
Mhm.
if you want to call it the being in the spirit or something like that.
Or even,
Whenever,
like, Diana calls it discernment, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, right, right.
So, I mean, it's not a new word, she didn't make the word, but she does I
I've
think the
heard
way
that.
she explains discernment, is definitely what that sounds like because there is, like, the whole, being a witch and being, like, trained in different spiritualities, it's kind of like, um, you have to kind of if it's fear-based feeling, if it feels like anxiety, you know, if it feels bad, basically, then it's something you need to kind of think about a little more. But when things are, like you said, like a calm feeling with ease, it's like almost like whatever it is or whatever the information is coming from, the universe, whatever it is telling you to pay attention at that moment,
Yeah, or it's a
you know?
gift. Yeah, and it's funny too because the things that feel here in the heart, like they're both these are both good well, they can be both good. I'm right now, let's talk about it. Things that feel good here in the heart and the things that feel good here in the stomach are different. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
But they're so related, but when they come in, I can tell the difference about how they're coming in. And they're both different. They're both good. I mean, this is kind of funny, but it's a difference between a pizza and a taco. They're both good.
Mhm.
I want them both. And they're both positive experiences, but they feel different. It's neat. It's really cool.
That does make sense. Kinda like, the different types of love, like, we only have the one word love, but, you know, if you look at Latin,
It's
there's all
exactly
sorts
like
of
that.
different types of love, but it's all good. So, that's an interesting way to put it. I like the pizza and taco analogy because 'cause I'm a foodie. I wish I wasn't. I wish I was just like, "Oh, I hate food," like, you know, but I don't, so
So
Um
go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
No, I was going to say I want to say one other thing, because this is the most fascinating, one of the most fascinating things about Upside. So when I there the Upside shows me a quantum view of our DNA, right? So at least it shows me the same thing again and again. And one of the things it does, much like when you see a cell divide going from an egg or 2, 4, 6, when you know how that process is, right? 2, 4, 6, 8, and then it turns into something. Upside shows me a DNA strand with these bizarre candy cane things, which are not part of our DNA at all, right? It's not. You can't. You look under a microscope, you're not going to see them. Um, but they also show me what happens before the candy canes and what happens after. Um, one of my like challenges in dreams is that if we're seeing the same thing, right? If I can find someone else with Upsight that can see the same thing, they'll be able to say, oh, are you seeing this before it and this afterwards? When that happens, there's going to be a feeling in my soul of euphoria, like, ta-da, I've got somebody else that can see the same kind of thing I can, because it's always the same. And where's it coming from and whatever. It's like nothing in our world that we know. So, but the fact that it's consistent and it keeps coming back, I believe it to be truth or some kind of these candy cane things. I call it dark matter. It's because, it's a placeholder that's interacting with it. So I can't wait to find someone else who can do that, because I know it's eventually someone else will be able to see very similar things that I can see. I just don't know when it's going to be.
That's that's interesting, because I know a lot of people use dark matter, like maybe it's dark matter because we don't really know a lot about it,
Good placeholder.
Yep, exactly. What do you see as, so say this is something that some people can awaken, or say you're able to teach people that have a little bit of this, like pieces of how you do Upsight, like different abilities, and you're able to teach them to put it all together. What do you think is like a practical application of Upsight? If
Well,
more people can do it.
Let's put the practical aside, because I still
Okay.
don't know.
Okay,
My wife
yeah,
is like,
fair enough.
yeah, so forget that for a minute, because that's such a great question.
Oh,
I
no,
don't
I
have
mean,
an
like, it's
answer.
just one that popped into my head, because I was like, "Well, what can this be used for?"
No, that's the
If it has
question.
some sort of insight to things happening around us or whatever it is, so
So from a literally saying what practical, I'm still trying to figure it out. As far as teaching, I don't want to call myself a teacher of this because I'm still learning it. That said, the best way, if you think you have this and want to practice it, the best way is right before you're going to bed at night. If you can't sleep, there's something called the Gansfeld effect, where you have all the lights off and you're total quiet darkness, and all you can see things start moving. If you stay with it long enough and sit there and say, okay, can I see a diamond? If it turns into a diamond, and then, and once you start interacting with it, now maybe the next night it'll be there without you interacting with it. Maybe something will be waiting for you the next night and you try to interact with it. That's the first step.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, and then you can go into the deeper, like meaningful things, remote viewing. But if you can do that would be cool, because I think you can learn that. I do. I think that's like a muscle,
You can? Yeah.
like
I
training,
think you can.
training. Yeah, I do.
I had a priestess that would teach that, actually.
Yeah.
She didn't use the term you use, but it was, you put like you would put like an eye pillow on, like not like a heavy one, just like a normal, like people wear in the movies when they're trying to like sleep during the daytime. Something like a silk pillow or something over your eyes, and then all noise canceling and all, and you would watch the darkness. And basically you would try, part of the exercise that she was doing was, you're going to draw a circle and then you're going to undraw the circle, but you have to see it or you didn't do it.
Yeah, good. That's great.
So
Yeah.
Eventually you would start seeing, almost like if you stared at a ring light for a long time, but this is
Good.
before
Perfect.
I even had a ring light, but that's what I was seeing. It was like this circle.
Yeah.
And then it would go around, but then you can start doing other shapes.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of how you go into another altered state, where maybe you're seeing other places, to put it in a way that's not so out there, so I think that people can do that.
Well, sure. I mean, think about this. Think about what dreaming is. Dreaming is this. I mean, we don't control our dreams, but that's what it is. If you it's such a clay. If you can dream it, you can do it, But it's
you can control
true.
your dreams if you become a lucid dreamer.
Sure.
So, and then what can you do after that? You can astral project. And it's like, I think people are very limiting of themselves. And sometimes they either just need to be told, hey, you can do this, or they need a way to calm their body and calm all the stuff going on around them, so they can actually open up to these other things. So they're using their brain in a way where they can tap in.
Yeah.
Versus all this sensory overload. Like, I've got a fan over here, I've got lights, I hear cars coming, the kids are downstairs, and I know all this is happening and I'm hearing it all at once. But when you shut all of that off, you're left with your mind. And so many people say, like, the way outward is inward. And I think that's a way of saying, like, call
You know,
yourself together,
well,
you
you know
know?
what? And I think, and actually, let's talk about this. Before we got on the air, we were talking about how I exercise and how my running is like I love to run, and I absolutely think that helps me calm my mind. And when I run, it's a meditation. So, you know, physical activity can help calm your mind. And listen, I'm not, even though I'm in recovery and I don't party anymore. I'm not anti, people can party and have a good time all the time without being drug addicts. People, I'm not. Do you do you people know if they have a problem. We're not stupid. We may put it off, but you can find higher states through drugs. I'm not suggesting it, but obviously people have been saying that for thousands and thousands of years. um so yeah, meditation, if psilocybin or whatever, if you're
Yeah.
trying to explore, just be careful.
Oh, absolutely. And there's just I mean, there's even types of breathing like holotropic breath work
Oh,
that will get you there.
definitely.
Even if you do breath of fire in yoga, and it has a Sanskrit name that I always mess up, but it's breath of fire, and you're basically, when I first did breath of fire, it really, when I stopped, I felt high.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and in me, I was like, "Oh, you're just depriving yourself of oxygen," like, it's sure, maybe you are, but you're still achieving an altered state
For sure.
through
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So, I don't there's plenty of ways to enjoy altered states without actually doing something like, what
With,
would
of
be
course, it's called a
considered
runner.
hard,
There's a
a
runner's
drug,
high. They have a runner's high. You hit this
Runner's
place and
high.
then you're done running. You feel
Cycling,
better.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
it's legit.
There's a class called soul cycling, and you get on one of those weighted bikes, and that thing had me like, I'd never done a runner's high or never felt a runner's high because I was never a runner, just like you couldn't make me do it. Like,
Yeah,
I've always liked hiking, but
yeah.
cycling, with the, cycling and those classes, like, I loved that. But there was one time where she had, like, lights and music and all this stuff, and I remember, like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I'm gonna leave my body because I had been doing, transcendental meditation, and I had done altered state traveling before. And so, I was like, "Oh no, I feel like I'm gonna leave my body, like, right now."
Was it
You know?
pleasant or were you scared? Were
Oh,
you
I was just, like, afraid of, like, what if I astral project right now on this bike because it got me to this, like, high in my head.
Yeah.
It made me feel like I was gonna leave my body. But there like I said, there are soul cycling classes, and it's called soul cycling, where the intention is to reach an altered state through exercise.
You talk about being afraid too, and we even talked about there's a dark side to this upside. I've seen things that I would never want to see, because anything you can imagine, and never mind you imagine it, but they show you things like, so let's say there's some negative energy. They've shown me, I talked about this on another podcast, like a KFC a bucket with baby parts in it. It was horrible. And I
Why
was
do
like,
they do that?
I
Because I've
don't
had a
know.
similar experience. I was lucid dreaming, and I wake up and I realize it's a dream because of the goriness that they were
Yeah,
showing
I
me.
don't know. I
But
don't know what the payoff is, but
mm,
there's some, you're freaked out, and there's many other things, but you
mhm,
don't know why. You can be in a good state and that can come in and you can stay out of it. But at the same time, that's the negative. I can sit back and see, like, I can see pictures of my sons when they were toddlers, like your kids' age, playing in the backyard.
oh,
Now,
yeah.
is that an actual memory, or is it just collection of things? So think about this, and it doesn't matter. It's still amazing, right? It's still
Mhm,
amazing to see your kid's toddler. Now, if I was in an MRI, now I know there's parts of the brain that have to do with memory, right? So if I'm
right,
doing Upsight and I think it's my kids playing when they're young, is the memory center of the brain going to highlight, right? And
right,
what about let's say we're talking about a position on Earth. Like, let's say if it's in France, is there a France center in the brain? That's what would be
mhm,
so cool. Am I actually in France, or is it just you think you're in France?
right.
We would be able to know these things. Again, for the MRIs, maybe it has to be more advanced than the MRIs, but
Right.
yeah.
Well,
So
that's a question that a lot of, contactees and abductees have, like, did I actually go on a ship, or was my consciousness taken? Or was
yeah,
my consciousness abducted?
yeah,
Or was
yeah. These are, again,
'cause
I
some people have
that's
full body abductions where they're like, "Oh, no, I remember, like, going outside or floating out of the window or, through a wall in some cases." But there's some people who are like, "Well, it's almost like an out of body experience for them, where
Yeah.
they are leaving their body, which everybody knows what I don't know why I'm explaining out of body experience to people because I know my audience knows. But they see themselves leaving their body, but their body's still on the bed with their husband or their cat or whoever,
Right.
and they are being taken against their will, but it's just like their consciousness.
Yeah.
That's freaking. That's almost scary. That
It is
their
scary.
consciousness
So
is
I've
replaced.
asked Upsight, what do I look like to these beings? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, well, show me is it my silhouette? Is it like this? Am I seeing them like me?
Yeah.
And I get different answers every time. So there's no answer I get that I think is right. You know what I mean? Again, maybe it's whatever I'm looking at, or whatever
Right.
being that happens to be there. Yeah, so there's so much, there's so much research that needs to be done
Right.
in this. So let's talk about telepathy for a minute,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
I know you guys are doing on the 21st, you guys are having a big conversation with some people. Is that fair to say? Are you having a chat or something with David?
Oh, yes, I'm having yep, I'm having an experiencer kind of like round table type thing.
Well, David and I, one of the guys that's going to be in the chat, I don't
Mhm.
think he'd mind me telling this because we talked about it on UFR Twitter. I went to his house about 2 weeks ago and I was like, listen, dude, let's try this. I know I can do this on demand. I know you don't have Upsight, but you're an experiencer. You've had stuff downloaded from these extraterrestrials, interdimensional. Let's see if we can do it. Let's try. I will manifest this image and you describe what you see. Or first of all, can you see it? We tried that first. That did not work at all. Then we said, all right, I'm going to have a scene. And I'm watching this scene and he's like thinking what this could be, right? We tried it with mixed results. We were both facing the same way, like a screen, right? Then we're like, you know what? Let's face each other like a conversation. When we did this, once we changed our bodies to face each other, when I did it, I would, let's say, describing the scene, he got 30 to 40% of it all the time, but one scene, he described every single thing in it that I was like, this is so freaky. It was wild. And he's not seeing it. He's like, I'm seeing and it was a guy on an ATV, off-road ATVer, right? With some guy on the mud. He's like, I see somebody with a helmet, goggles, he's off-road, and I'm going, how is this happening? And he's like, he's on a motorcycle. And I just stopped. I'm like, no, he's on an ATV, but close enough, right? Now, I know you're not going to look for a skeptic listening. They're going to say that's BS. It doesn't matter what they say. This is not something that's ever going to get scientifically proven like that. This is just people thinking, let's try it by ourselves. Let's be the citizen scientists and see what
there's
we
nothing
can
wrong
do.
with that.
No, of course not. That's how things.
Our kids do it. They play like guess.
You're right.
What is the game? Guess a number between 1 and 30, or guess which hand. Like people,
Absolutely.
like we're always playing games, people, and we're always there's no difference between some games and an experimentation of intuition. Like I do it with the kids. Like I even did this weird thing, and my son's probably gonna be like, "Oh, like my mom was such a weirdo." I wanted him. He showed some signs that he has seen spirits. He's showing some signs of being more sensitive to energies around him.
Yeah.
And so I gave him a little eye cover thing, and I had him smelling different herbs, feeling different things to help him like make his senses more prominent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and it's also like I'd give him 2 things that feel similar, and
well, it's genetic. Yeah, there's going to be something there.
So people can train on this, just like you would train for people train their clairs, which is like, your spiritual gifts is what they call clairaudience, clairvoyance. There's a lot of them, but it sounds like John had a moment where he was practicing with you. And
if you want, talk about it. It was wild. Mm-hmm. We were both like, wow, this is really cool. And we don't even know each other. And I think the more you know, we know each other, for Twitter, we've since gotten to, know each other better. But I think there's an element of it's like knowing somebody and picking up on what they're putting out there. I think you get better and better and better and more connected.
Oh, for sure. And people have done that. Like people have walked up and did that to me. Like my dad's passed. So this one girl walks up to me in a bar and she's walking by and she looks at me and she's like, stop. She's like, oh my God, you have a ghost. She's like, yeah, there's a spirit with you. He looks like this. And she described my dad to where he always wore this fedora. She said something about feathers and like hawks. And like My dad's side's Native American, in case you can't tell, just from that little snippet.
Wow.
But there's something with him and hawks. Like they would always find a feather. Like when I went to go see his gravesite, I couldn't bring myself to go to the actual funeral. So me and my boyfriend at the time are walking at this little tiny cemetery in Eloy, Arizona, which is outside, outside of Tucson. It's a tiny town. And I see a group of people and they look up and it's my family. We didn't know that each other were going. And my grandma walks up and she's visibly disturbed, holding a feather. Now, where you were standing, I found this hawk feather.
Wow.
And we looked up and you were there. It's just like weird stuff.
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
no, no.
How do you
That's,
even,
I mean, come on, that's synchronicity. That's meant to be. Right.
Right. So it was something with feathers, but the girl at the bar, like, where did that come from? Where did she get that information?
I don't know.
I
don't
don't
have answers.
She didn't know me. It's
That's
just
more
like, where is
questions.
it coming from?
Right.
That's one of your questions for Upsight. Where is this coming from? If it's
I've
coming out
asked
of
that.
me, then something common should light up in my brain if I'm being studied. If it's coming from somewhere else,
I've asked that so many times, and I don't get an answer. Upsight will not tell me where it's coming from. That's what's intriguing as heck. Now there are beings that jump into Upsight, right? That will say what's up. But Upsight itself, I don't know what it is. I don't know. My goal is to build a team of people to work on this. I wrote that blog, and I published it last year. It's a really, really long blog. It takes 26 minutes to read it, but it's got the math in it. It's got what I just talked about at the quantum genetic level. And it's got the way I see, or Upsight shows me rainbows,
Yes.
from the side. So very specific things that repeat again and again. But I would love to have some other people that can do it. And I actually think this is my calling. I think this is why I have these gifts, because I'm supposed to put a team together. That feels like that's what's supposed to happen, because I've been on this mission for 10 years and I have not made, other than being so persistent that I can't say no. My wife is, she's like, you're relentless about this. I'm like,
oh my goodness. And she is a champion herself. I mean, like some people do,
yeah.
She loves you like beyond love. There's like a new level of love this woman has for you that we don't even know.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. When we did the first book clubs, everyone's like, we don't want to talk to you. We want to talk to your wife.
Oh, wow.
No, it's true though. So she would get on and answer questions. And there was a lot of questions because I put her through hell. But there was a lot of questions and you're not wrong. She's fantastic. But next year, let me just say this.
But that's we're at the hour. So I was going to ask you, what do you have coming up?
I can't say too much, but all I can say, I don't want to say too much because I'm in the middle of the paperwork, getting the compliance and all this stuff. But next year, it looks like I will be in one of the top research institutes in the world doing this. So which means these guys are as interested as I am. So as I will, when this happens, I'll be promoting it because I might want another person. You know what I mean? I might have to look for another person to come with me that has Upsight. Depends. It depends on what kind of tests we're going to do. That's what I'm pushing for. I don't know if it's going to happen because there are certain rules. It takes, when you're doing experiments with people, you have to.
Right.
Rules that don't matter to me but matter to them because
it's like an ethical, it's like medical.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Compliance. So I'll probably like to be making the rounds when I know what's going on, know when it's going to be. I'll probably do podcasts making the rounds talking about this. Maybe I'll have a form, a website to sign people up who might have Upsight, be a questionnaire. You know what I mean?
You should definitely do that.
Yeah. So I'm very, very excited about that. And that's what looks like 2023 is going to have in store for me. And I'll have more details when I feel comfortable saying specifically what it is. But it's going to be a year for research, which is finally.
That's good. I think that, everything happens at the perfect time. And the world's at a point right now where we've heard enough weirdness. We might actually be ready to understand it. Yeah. Or we might actually be ready to receive this this idea of Upsight that's out there and just the whole experiencer world in general, whether you have, clairvoyancy or psi abilities or not. Like the world is definitely, if we would have said any of this a couple of years ago, even.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt that we are more ready now than even 2 years ago. Yeah, even 2 years ago.
Yeah, so the progression is definitely forward, and I'm glad you're going to be able to do some research on this because they've researched other people that have these sorts of, I don't want to put it in the same camp because I don't think that it is, but there's got to be an area of your brain that is showing something the way we've talked about schizophrenics, but also Alzheimer's patients, and
Yeah.
also, so they go somewhere,
Yeah.
like
Oh, no
they're
doubt. No
somewhere,
doubt.
they're seeing it,
Well,
so
schizophrenia presents itself different in different cultures. That when I read that a few years ago, I'm like, so people, it's family based, paranoid based, some are friendly. So I find that very interesting. That means these messages are coming from somewhere, and it's culture related. So that, well, from my perspective, that means it might be outside the brain as well. So remember, they treat schizophrenia with drugs, so the people stop having this because they don't know how to do it. They don't know how to deal with it. I don't know what the right answer is. I'm not an expert on it. I don't have schizophrenia. I just have an amazing brain that does things that are similar to symptoms of it, but obviously I don't have it.
Yeah, I remember in the book you said that was never a diagnosis.
No.
So I guess we're over the hour right now. Is there anything that you didn't get to talk about that you wanted to talk about or address?
No, this was great. I'm glad I got a chance to talk about this book to a book lover. So thank you for having me on. Yeah, I appreciate this. I'm glad we had this conversation. Again, we talked about the book. So people, is it a phenomena book? Unlikely, but it definitely talks about phenomena things. And it talks about, like you said, high strangeness.
It's just a great book though.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've been told it's pretty, it's a fast read, page turner. There's some wild stories in it if you're interested in that. And most importantly, it has a happy ending. But if you are an experiencer, with some mental health, you think you're going crazy or something, I'm telling you, you can come through the other side with intact. Just takes a little work.
That's beautiful. And if you can do it, and I don't want to say anybody can do it because some people might be like, no, I can't. But I think
That's
that
what I feel too.
it's very motivating at the end, guys, and just knowing you now and meeting you now. I never would have known that you had gone through all this, in the book. So I kind of knew you was like from your Upsight stuff and the stuff you were writing, I think maybe on your blog, or I
Sure.
I was following you on Twitter and I was reading things that you were posting. So yes, that's a great note to end it on. Hang out backstage after I end the broadcast because I want to say bye to you there.
Okay.
Thank you everybody joining now. Hi, Bob Marley, Curious George, Diana, Carolina, Logan, Barry, Lord Boss. And Curious George was here earlier. Thank you, everybody in the live chat, for showing up. And if you're listening later, thank you as well. Please like, subscribe, share. Is that how it goes? All the things. And let me know how you like the show. If you need to get a hold of Tom, I put his information in the description as well as the link to his book. And the book is Jesus Goes to Hollywood. Coming to frame you. Oh, it's not going to do
like it. It's invisible.
There we go.
There you go.
Green screen problems. Anyways, it likes red too, I guess. But yeah, so all that's there for you. I will see you guys next week for we're gonna have a very experiencer Christmas. So we're gonna have John on and a bunch of other awesome people, Steph from UIP Experiencers, on to kind of just talk to some experiencers because it's kind of important. A lot has happened this past year, and I can't wait to see what everybody thinks about everything happening in the world with UAP or UFOs. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great night, everybody. And hang out again, Tom. I'll talk to you in a minute. Have a great night.